You know how it is when they pull down a house in London, how the loose strife springs up as soon as the sunshine can fall on the earth, purple in flower time, silver in seed time. They will have to beat a path through a gentle purple jungle, these visitors from the next civilization, perhaps from another star, who come for a holiday trip to see the broken arches, the domes sliced like cut cake with daylight, the shells of houses where the red hair couches, which once were London. But they will think it well worth while, for the insight it gives them into our Augustan age. They will walk about oohing and eyeing, while their eyes forge a past perfection for the ruins, imagining that when they were whole, they were right. Look, the professor of archaeology who is their guide will say, this was the Magnificent, one of the superb edifices they called hotels. Oh, what precious marbles! Oh, what breadth of design! Men were masters then, and no mistake. They will brood as they walk through the halls and sink into nostalgia for the past. For it will be pretty, with all those flowers and ruins, and they will be male and female, and it adds something to a day's outing if one can feel a little wistful towards evening. How nobly, they will mourn, life must have been lived in such a setting. That was indeed an age of power. Would we could learn the formula. Tell us, Professor, what did they do in these proud palaces they called hotels? We don't quite know, the Professor will say. They seem to have been places of amusement. But they must have been more than that, or they would not have spent quite so much money on them. And there are traces in pictures of fertility rites. That would be the cabaret. So they will stand in the gentle purple jungle, rolling their eyes at the splendid broken spans, at the vaults where the eyries are, and they will not dream that anybody ever frequented these halls less dignified than a statesman come to draw up a sapient treaty. Not for 1 minute would they ever think of our poor George, as now we see him. For he had to leave his house, and he came to the Hotel Magnificent, because they all knew him there. Often and often he had taken part in the ritual that is performed all day long, and far into the night, in the cells of this vast honeycomb of masonry. A man of one order feels a material desire, to bathe in warm scented waters, to change into clean clothes, to eat the roe of a fish from a Russian river, to drink a wine made of grapes grown in a certain blessed Burgundian acre. A man of another order gets him what he wants, and then stands waiting, bending his head. Then the man of the first order takes money from his pocket, and the man of the second order murmurs, "Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir." George has had it said to him 100 times at the Magnificent, and he has had other unction applied to his self-esteem there too. And many women have looked at him at once abjectly and imperatively, as if they would sue him for restitution of the droit de seigneur, did he not show himself as libertine as rich men ought to be, for the wheels to go round. Many men have slapped him on the back and called him good old George, and stood him one drink, and been stood two by him, and told him what staunch friends he would find them to the grave. So George establishes himself in the Magnificent as in a second home, and goes out to look for work. But he finds none. Persons into whose businesses he proposes to introduce himself look panic-stricken, as if he had been proposed that they should engage the spirit of chaos as a managing director, however great an appreciation they may have expressed for him in the past. The world goes round. Nobody will see him. Everybody he calls upon is always out. When he gets back to the Magnificent, there is silence. Nobody murmurs, "Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir," for he has no more money to take from his pockets. He sees approaching a day when he will have to leave, but he is incredulous that he will ever arrive. A young man knows that he has not always been as he is, but was once a child, Yet he cannot believe that some day he will change again and be old. Even so, George knows he was once poor, but cannot believe that when he became rich he did not become immutably so, eternally a member of the class that pays and is thanked. But the day advances coldly on his incredulity, and is here. George is borne out through the hall, losing his dignity in a sudden realization that life is even more difficult than he had suspected. He had believed that men belonged to either of those orders, the men that paid and the men that murmur, "Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir." But what happens if one belongs to neither? Nothing tells him in the blank eyes of the women that once offered him the most intimate kinds of felicity, of the men that used to call him good old George. The Hotel Magnificent will perhaps be not a less agreeable place, when its arches are broken, its domes sliced by the sky, its courtyards choked with loose strife, purple in flower time, silver in seed time.